Hi there, I'm David Hunt, owner of GameMasters Guild, located in Crestview, Florida. And today, I'm going to take a look at 10 blue cards you may not have known about for your Magic the Gathering mill deck. So, let's destroy someone's mind and check it out. Mill is great.
With any deck, it's real important to have what you need in hand, and that's why See Beyond is a card that you need. For 1 blue and 1 colorless, it's a sorcery that allows you to draw 2 cards and then shuffle a card from your hand into your library. When you're milling your opponent, you need to do it quick and you need to have the right cards in hand. And this card allows you to not only get 2 cards to refresh your hand, but to get rid of something that is just not effective at the current moment. So definitely consider getting See Beyond in your deck. See Beyond is from Rise of the Eldrazi. Eventually, your opponent's going to have a turn, and it's important to have Dismal Failure in your hand. It costs 2 blue and 2 colorless. It's an instant that allows you to counter target spell, and the controller of that spell must discard a card. Dismal Failure is from Planar Chaos, and what a great card. Not only are you playing a mill deck, but this card also not only counters a spell as they cast it, but it makes them get rid of another card in your hand. So really, it's a 2 for 1. It's a win-win. From Innistrad, we have Curse of the Bloody Tome. For 1 blue and 2 colorless, it's an enchantment or a curse that enchants a player, preferably your opponent. At the beginning of enchanted player's upkeep, that player puts the top 2 cards of his or her library into his or her graveyard. Now, unless your opponent has a way to get rid of enchantments or permanents in general, this is always going to be hitting them every single turn, and you don't even have to do anything. What a great card. From Dark Ascension, we have basically the equivalent of a fireball, but for mill. This is Increasing Confusion. Its casting cost is 1 blue and X. It's a sorcery. Target player puts the top X cards of his or her library into his or her graveyard. If Increasing Confusion was cast from a graveyard, that player puts twice as many cards into his or her graveyard instead. And if you're wondering, yes, it has flashback. That's how you can play it from the graveyard. And it's blue and X. This card is great. I mean, a milling fireball basically is what this is. Doesn't hit you for damage, but it hits you for cards. What an interesting card. Now, if you thought that was brutal, this is Thought Scour. It's an instant that costs 1 blue and makes target player puts the top 2 cards of his or her library into his or her graveyard, and allows you to draw a card. So you're refilling your hand and getting ready to mill them some more. But it gets better. Here we have another card from Innistrad called Dream Twist. It's an instant that for 1 blue, you can make target player put the top 3 cards of his or her library into his or her graveyard. Also, as flashback, for 1 blue and 1 colorless, you can cast it from your graveyard and make them do it all over again. As if that wasn't bad enough, next we have Memory Sluice. It's actually a hybrid card. You can either spend 1 black or 1 blue on it. It's a sorcery, so you can only do it on your turn, but it makes target player put the top 4 cards of his or her library into his or her graveyard. And as a bonus, it has Conspire, which, as you play this spell, you may tap 2 untapped creatures you control that share a color with it, and when you do, you get to copy it, and you may choose a new target for the copy. This card is crazy. Not only do you get to mill someone 4 cards for only spending 1 mana, but you can tap any 2 creatures and do it again. This card is nuts. Out of Amonkhet, we have Compelling Argument. It's a blue sorcery that costs 1 blue and 1 colorless that makes target player put the top 5 cards of his or her library into his or her graveyard. As a bonus, if you need some draw power, for 1 blue, this card has cycling. Although in a mill deck, I'm not exactly sure why you'd cycle this card, but I guess if you were looking for something and you were desperate, you could always cycle this card as extra draw power. The insanity only gets worse with Mind Sculpt. It's a sorcery that costs 1 blue and 1 colorless that makes target opponent put the top 7 cards of his or her library into his or her graveyard. With a playset of these things, you're going to drive your opponent nuts. Now, the insanity doesn't end here because there's one more final card coming up, and when combined with the other cards, this card is really the end-all, be-all of mill. So let's take a look. The final card is Brain Freeze from Scourge. It's a blue instant that costs 1 blue and 1 colorless that makes target player put the top 3 cards of his or her library into his or her graveyard, but it has Storm, so when you play this spell, you copy it for each spell played before it this turn, and you can choose new targets for the copies. Again, for every card you play before Brain Freeze, your opponent has to mill 3 more cards. So if you play 3 other cards before Brain Freeze, not only do they have to mill the 3 cards for Brain Freeze, but they have to mill 3 more cards for each of the other spells that you cast. So that would be 3 spells, 3 cards each. That's 9, plus Brain Freeze, that's 12 cards they'd have to mill. You can see how quickly this gets out of hand, especially if you're holding, I don't know, a couple Ornithopters in your hand maybe, and you maybe mill them with 1 or 2 other low-cost cards and then hit them with a Brain Freeze. Yeah, it'll freeze their brain all right. And most likely, win you the game.
Well, thank you for watching that video, and I hope you really enjoyed it. I hope you got some good information out of it. And I gotta tell you, way back in the day when I first started playing Magic, I didn't care to play blue, wasn't interested in blue. I didn't appreciate blue for what it was. And over time, well, let's just say I've grown a lot. And blue, I'm pretty impressed. And mill deck, as bad as it is to be on the receiving end of it, it's always best to give, especially when you're blue. And mill, it's just one of those ways you can just keep on giving. And with the cards on this list, you can knock someone out pretty quick. Again, I'm David Hunt, owner of GameMasters Guild, telling you to be sure to like, share, subscribe, check out my other videos, and most of all, I want you to stay safe, play great games, and I'll see you real soon.